You never forget the sound of sirens meant for you, especially when you've done nothing wrong. They slice through the quiet of the cul-de-sac like a blade through silk. Red and blue lights flickered across freshly painted mailboxes and manicured lawns, casting wild shadows on white picket fences. The kind of neighborhood that looked safe on a brochure. Perfect symmetry, perfect smiles. But perfection, I was about to learn, can be the best camouflage for rot. I was standing in my driveway, a set of house keys in one hand and a box labeled kitchen stuff in the other. Sweat ran down the back of my neck. The moving truck was still idling, exhaust fumes mixing with the sharp scent of cut grass. And then I heard her voice. High-pitched, sharp, accusatory. "There he is. That's him! He's been here all morning." I turned. She stood across the street. Early 50s, blonde bob, sunglasses too big for her face, and a bright purple robe that screamed for attention. She looked like she'd stepped right out of a Neighborhood Watch meme. 2 security guards were with her. One young, unsure. The other older, with a clipboard and the weary authority of someone who's seen too much petty drama. The younger one approached me. "Sir, can I ask what you're doing here?" I blinked, slowly. "Moving in." He frowned, skeptical. "This is your property?" "Yup," I said. "Just closed last week." He looked down at his clipboard, flipping through pages. Behind him, she crossed her arms and gave a tight, satisfied smile. The kind people wear when they think they've won before the game even started. "You see?" she said. "Told you. He's not supposed to be here. This is private property." Private property. My property. Something in me tightened, that quiet anger you learn to control after years of explaining yourself to people who never really listen. I set the box down gently and reached into my car. My hand brushed the manila folder I'd brought with me, the one with every signature, every line of approval. When I turned back, the older guard was studying me carefully. His voice softened. "Do you have proof of ownership, sir?" I handed him the folder. He flipped it open, brows raising. "This looks official." "It is official." The woman, I'd later learn her name was Karen Whitmore, snatched at the papers. "That can't be right. I'm the head of the HOA. I would have been notified." There it was, the title. Head of the HOA. Of course she was. I watched her face as the realization flickered there, the possibility that she might be wrong, if only for a second. Then she pushed it away, replacing doubt with defiance. "This neighborhood has standards," she said. "We don't just let anyone move in." The word anyone hung in the air like a bad smell. The guard shifted awkwardly. "Ma'am, looks like his name is on the deed." Her expression froze. You could almost hear the snap, the moment her confidence cracked, but not enough to crumble. "There must be some mistake," she muttered. "I'll have to review this with the board." I smiled then, not the friendly kind, the quiet, knowing kind, the kind that says, "You just made your biggest mistake in front of witnesses." "That's fine," I said calmly. "Just make sure to spell my name correctly on the next HOA email. Marcus Lee, 228 Maple Court." I could feel her hatred ripple across the lawn. The guards left soon after, apologizing under their breath. Karen stayed a moment longer, glaring at me as if trying to memorize the face of her enemy. Then she turned on her heel and disappeared into her immaculate, rule-abiding house. The cul-de-sac went silent again. I stood there for a long moment, the hum of the moving truck filling the air. My hands shook, not from fear, but from the weight of familiarity. Because this wasn't new. Different street. Same story. I'd grown up being out of place in neighborhoods like this. Always the assumption, never the introduction. Always the suspicion before the smile. And even now, a successful attorney, homeowner, taxpayer, the narrative hadn't changed. But this time, I told myself, It would end differently. As I unpacked boxes that evening, the neighborhood seemed to watch me. Curtains twitched. Garage doors half opened, then closed again. Even the breeze felt judgmental. I poured myself a glass of water and stared out my window at the house across the street. Karen's house. String lights, flower pots, a flag fluttering in the breeze. Beautiful. Harmless. Except I'd seen her kind before. People who hid control under the mask of community standards. The HOA wasn't just a group of neighbors. It was power. Real local power. And people like her wielded it like a weapon. By nightfall, I'd received my first HOA email. Dear Mr. Lee, we've noticed your vehicle was parked facing the wrong direction in the driveway. Please review our parking policy. No, welcome. No, congratulations on your new home. Just rules. Just control. I laughed. A low, disbelieving laugh that came from somewhere between exhaustion and amusement. So that's how it's gonna be, I murmured. I didn't know then that this was just the beginning. That this one petty email was the first shot in what would become a quiet war. A war fought not with fists, but with policies. Not in courtrooms, but in cul-de-sacs. And it would expose every rotten root hidden beneath this neighborhood's perfect lawns. Before the week was over, I'd learn just how far Karen was willing to go. And she'd learn one thing she never expected. That I wasn't just another homeowner. I was the one person she could never control. That night, as I took the trash out, I saw movement by her window. A phone camera glinting in the dark. She was recording me. I waved. Slowly. Deliberately. Because if she wanted to play this game, she just didn't realize I'd already started documenting every move. To understand how I ended up leading the meeting that destroyed her, I whispered to the camera, "You need to know what Karen had already done to me." They say perfection is peaceful. But peace here was a performance, and I was the uninvited actor who ruined the show. The morning after the driveway incident, I stepped outside expecting fresh air. Instead, I felt eyes. They were everywhere. Behind curtains, through mail slots, hidden behind the glint of sunglasses during morning walks. It wasn't paranoia. It was presence, the kind that makes your skin itch. Quiet, polite hostility disguised as neighborhood watch. I tried to ignore it. I smiled. I waved. I made small talk with anyone brave enough to look my way. But then came the letters. It was waiting in my mailbox that first weekend. A crisp white envelope embossed with gold lettering. Willow Ridge Homeowners Association. Dear Mr. Lee, we've noticed your trash bins were visible from the curb longer than 24 hours after pickup. Please correct this violation immediately to maintain neighborhood standards. I stared at it, stunned. My bins had been out for less than 10 hours. I looked around the street. Every other house had bins out too. Only one mailbox bore an envelope like mine. Mine. By the third week, I'd received 5 more. Fence color not approved. Driveway length inconsistent with policy. Unregistered vehicle on premises. All signed. Every time, K. Whitmore, HOA Compliance Chair. It wasn't about trash cans or fences. It was about control. Karen wasn't just a neighbor. She was the unofficial ruler of Willow Ridge. People feared her. She didn't need to raise her voice. She had bylaws for that. At first, I laughed it off. I paid the minor fines, repainted a gate, even trimmed the hedges she claimed were too high. But the more I complied, the worse it got. It wasn't about rules anymore. It was about reminding me who she thought belonged here, and who didn't. The whispers started small. I'd be jogging in the morning and hear them drift across driveways like cigarette smoke. I heard he's renting. No, he's one of those short-term investors. Someone said he threw loud parties. None of it true, all of it traceable, Because every lie began near one house, Karen's. She'd stand outside watering her flowers, phone in hand, smiling as neighbors passed by. Her tone sweet, her words poison. "Oh, I'm not saying he's trouble," she'd tell someone. "But you can never be too careful, right?" It's funny, hate rarely screams, it whispers. And by the time you notice, it's already moved in next door. One night, my dog, Baxter, barked at a raccoon near the fence. The next morning, another notice appeared. Noise complaint filed. Excessive animal disturbance. I actually laughed, out loud, in disbelief. That laughter died when I saw what was taped beside the letter. One afternoon, I caught her waiting at my mailbox. She had another letter in her hand. When she saw me, she smiled. Too wide, too perfect. "Oh, I was just making sure this didn't get lost," she said. "It's important HOA business." Her perfume hit me before her words did. Something expensive, sharp, citrusy. It stung my nose. "You could have emailed me," I said evenly. She tilted her head. "Emails can be misinterpreted. Paper is clearer." She slid the letter into my hands and leaned in, voice dropping to a whisper. "You'll learn how we do things around here, Mr. Lee. Everyone does." Then she turned and walked away. Not fast, not slow, just confident, like she owned me. That night, I opened the envelope. Another violation, this time for a decorative flag not in compliance. It wasn't a flag. It was my mother's small garden banner, a faded welcome home print she'd given me when I bought the house. And that was it. That was the moment my patience snapped. I wasn't angry exactly. I was clear she'd been playing chess, but she'd forgotten one thing. I'd been quietly studying the board. I began attending HOA meetings, quietly, at the back, taking notes. She didn't notice me at first. Why would she? I wasn't speaking, just observing. But I watched her. The way she manipulated the room, controlled the votes, dismissed questions. Every rule she broke, I wrote down. Every lie she told, I logged. I also started making friends. Not loudly, but intentionally. The retired cop down the street. The single mother whose mailbox she'd fined twice. The older couple she accused of unauthorized Christmas lights. One by one, they started talking. One by one, I started listening. The more I listened, the clearer it became. This wasn't just my battle. Karen had been terrorizing this neighborhood for years, and everyone was tired of pretending not to notice. A month later, I received another envelope. But this one wasn't from Karen. It was from the property developer. A letter announcing an internal audit of the HOA board and pending leadership changes. They'd found inconsistencies in how funds were handled. The letter ended with one line that made my heart stop. "We will soon be appointing an interim president to oversee reorganization and compliance." I smiled, because I already knew what was coming next. Karen didn't. "The trap's already set," I whispered, sliding the letter into my folder. "She just doesn't know she's standing in it." They always say the calm before a storm feels peaceful. But this wasn't peace. It was pressure. And the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, their hum blending with the whispers of a dozen curious neighbors. I sat in the back row, my notepad open, pen in hand. Not because I needed to write anything, because I wanted them to see me taking notes. Karen stood at the front, commanding the room like a queen in exile. A fresh haircut, a crisp red blazer, pearl earrings. She smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. On the table before her, a stack of papers, color-coded tabs, a silver nameplate reading K. Whitmore, HOA Chair. She tapped the microphone. "All right, everyone, let's begin." That evening, you could feel it pushing against the walls of the Willow Ridge clubhouse. Her tone was honeyed, professional, and razor-sharp. First order of business, ongoing compliance issues with the new homeowner at 228 Maple Court. Every head turned toward me. I felt their eyes crawl across my face. Some curious, some apologetic. Some, like hers, full of contempt. Disguised as duty, Karen adjusted her glasses dramatically and began listing violations, unauthorized, modifications to fencing, noise, disturbances, failure to maintain front lawn, aesthetic compliance. She flipped a page. Theatrically. And finally, potential misuse of common property during late-night activities. That one made me laugh. Quietly, but loud enough for her to hear. Her jaw twitched. "Something funny, Mr. Lee?" I looked up. Calm. Steady. "Just wondering how you found the time to write fiction between fines." A few people chuckled. The sound rippled through the room like cracks in her confidence. I stood, slowly. "If you're going to discuss me publicly, Ms. Whitmore, I think it's only fair I respond publicly." The room shifted. A few nods, a few murmurs of agreement. She hesitated, then gave a fake sweet shrug. "Of course. We value transparency here." I walked to the front, my shoes echoing on the tile. The smell of coffee and paper filled the air. Karen stepped aside reluctantly as I placed a manila folder on the table. "For the record," I said, "here are the alleged violations, every one of them false." I began laying out evidence, photos, timestamps, receipts. Every claim she'd made, disproven, neatly, fact by fact. I pointed to one complaint. Unauthorized fence color. Approved by the HOA, signed 2 months before I moved in. By you. Another. Noise complaint. Filed at 2:03 a.m. by the same person who took photos from across my yard. The photo appeared on the projector screen. I'd enlarged it for clarity. Gasps. Karen stiffened. "This is harassment," she snapped. "You have no right to—" "I have every right," I interrupted softly, "to defend myself against targeted discrimination." That word, discrimination, cracked the air like thunder. You could feel the tension shift. Neighbors looked at her differently now. Not at me. I continued, methodical and unflinching. "In the past 30 days, I've received 9 notices, more than any other homeowner in this neighborhood. 3 of those fines contradict HOA regulations. 2 are fabricated entirely." Then I turned to the board. "And if you check your bylaws, Section 4, subsection B, you'll see that selective enforcement is grounds for board removal." Karen's face drained of color. "You can't threaten me," she barked. "This is my HOA." Not I reached into my folder and pulled out a sealed envelope, the one I'd received from the property developer. "This," I said, "is the result of the internal audit the board's been ignoring. It details financial irregularities in HOA spending over the last 2 years, including unauthorized reimbursements made by you, Ms. Whitmore." Gasps again. Someone whispered, "Oh my God," Karen stammered. You don't understand. Those were community expenses. Personal travel, spa services, and event catering billed as HOA administration." I placed copies of the invoices on the projector screen. Her signature. "Right there. Any more?" I said quietly. I turned back to the crowd, letting the silence breathe. I didn't want to believe it. I thought this was just a power trip. But it's worse. It's corruption. And then I revealed the last page, the developer's official letter. Effective immediately, the Willow Ridge HOA Board will undergo leadership transition. Interim President, Marcus Lee. The room erupted. Gasps, murmurs, even applause. Karen went pale, frozen in place. "That's not possible." I faced her fully. "It's already signed. By the people who actually own this neighborhood's charter." A heavy pause. "You see, Ms. Whitmore, I didn't just buy a home here." The shift was instant. Neighbors who once avoided my gaze now nodded in silent approval. The same guard she'd called weeks earlier stood near the door, watching the downfall he probably never thought he'd see. Karen tried to regain control, papers shaking in her hands. "This meeting is over. You can't—" "Oh, it's not over," I said calmly. "It's just beginning. Because now, as HOA President, I'll be conducting a full review, starting with you." For the first time, she had nothing to say, just the sound of her breathing, shallow and quick. The red in her face wasn't power anymore. It was panic. DGT accountability. After the meeting, as people left, she lingered by the door. Her eyes met mine, sharp, burning. "You think this is over?" she hissed. "You have no idea what you've started." I smiled slightly. "You're right. I've started cleaning up this neighborhood." She left without another word. But I knew she wouldn't go quietly. And she didn't. Because the next morning, my phone buzzed with anonymous calls. Emails flooded in, complaints, accusations, rumors. Karen was cornered. And cornered people don't back down. They lash out. She'd built her empire on fear. Now she'd do anything to keep it from collapsing. But what she didn't realize, the truth wasn't coming for her anymore. It was already here. The morning after the meeting felt too quiet, like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. The sun poured through my blinds in golden streaks, but it didn't feel warm. It felt like a spotlight. I could still hear the echo of her voice from last night. "You have no idea what you've started." Coffee brewed in the kitchen. Rich, dark, bitter. The kind of bitterness that wakes you up and warns you at the same time. My phone buzzed non-stop. Anonymous texts, unknown numbers. And she knew exactly how to use them. Neighbors who had cheered last night now crossed the street to avoid me. People whispered when I walked past the mailboxes. A few even stopped inviting me to the community events. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was disappointed, because I'd expected the system to defend truth. But bias doesn't need proof, just volume. 2 days later, I decided it was time. No more silence, no more waiting. I called an emergency HOA session, open to all residents. Karen would have to face the music. But before that meeting, I made one quiet phone call to Daniel Harris, the independent auditor from the property management firm. He'd been reviewing the HOA's financials after my earlier complaint. His voice was calm, almost excited. "Marcus, you might want to be at the clubhouse early. I found something big." I smiled. Finally. The clubhouse was packed. Standing room only. Karen had gathered her loyal few, tight-lipped, arms crossed. She wore a navy blue suit this time, pearls gleaming, her smile tighter than ever. She stood up before I even spoke. "Before we begin," she said, loud and proud, "I'd like to motion to suspend the new president pending investigation." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I let her talk, the same way you let a storm finish before the sky clears. She waved papers, spoke of forged authority, biased audits, and abuse of power. And then I stood, calm, measured. "Thank you. Ms. Whitmore, I'll address all of that, in order." I turned toward the door. Daniel entered with a laptop and a projector. The lights dimmed. The first slide appeared. Spreadsheets, ledgers, bank transfers. "What you're seeing," I explained, "is the official HOA expense report for the past 2 years. Karen folded her arms, feigning confidence. "We've all seen this before." "Not this version," Daniel said, his voice steady. "This is the uncut file, recovered from the deleted records folder of the previous HOA computer, which was last used by you." Her face froze. Gasps again. Slide after slide. Transfers to private accounts. Payments to unregistered vendors. Personal purchases labeled as community maintenance. I read the line item aloud, $4,249. Holiday floral arrangements, deposited into K. Whitmore personal checking. The crowd erupted in whispers. That's not? She started, voice trembling. And $3,800 for a community planning retreat in Cancun, I added. Funny, because no one here recalls being invited. Her supporters shrank away. Even her friends looked down, embarrassed. Karen tried one last time. This is manipulation. He's making this up. Daniel spoke firmly. These records have been verified by the property firm's legal department. You can check the signatures. They're all yours. The silence was brutal. Even the air conditioner seemed to stop. Her lips trembled. Her hands clenched the podium. You people have no idea what it's like trying to run this place. I did everything for this community. A woman in the back, one of her old allies, stood up. No, Karen. You did it for yourself. That was the breaking point. Karen slammed her notebook shut, knocking her coffee cup to the floor. The spill spread like a stain across the polished wood. Fitting, I thought, her mess finally visible. By the end of the night, the board voted unanimously to remove her. Effective immediately. The HOA bylaws required her to surrender all documents, equipment, and keys. She left the room without a word, clutching her purse like a lifeline. Outside, the rain had started. Soft, cleansing, relentless. I stepped out a few minutes later. She was standing by her car, soaked, mascara streaking down her face. She looked at me once. No words. Just the hollow eyes of someone who finally realized she'd become her own worst story. Weeks passed. The neighborhood changed. Lawn chairs returned to front porches. People smiled again. Kids played in the street without being scolded for noise violations. We built something new, fair, transparent, human. For the first time, the HOA wasn't a weapon. It was a bridge. At the next community barbecue, Mrs. Jenkins, the oldest resident, handed me a plate of ribs and said, "You know, Marcus, for once, this place feels like a neighborhood again." And that, more than any title or power, was the victory I wanted. Some people build fences to keep others out. Others build communities to bring people together. Karen taught me something, not about hate, but about fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of being irrelevant. And sometimes, the only way to fight that kind of fear is with truth. Steady, quiet, undeniable truth. Because justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just stands there, calm, patient, and waits for the storm to pass.